Yes.
Can you tell me a little about the writing sessions of how you and
Now,
Eddie began on that?
basically, because the Beatles and you know, Bob Dylan, the Kinks, Stones, Love a Spoonful, began this new venture, writing their own material. Uh, I said, well, let's do this. Let's try it. You know what I mean? So, I had been writing all my life. It's just that, as I say, we couldn't use them. Now because we had this number one smash Ola, good loving. Uh, we had a little wait. So I said, let's try it. So I brought the songs in, and basically I wanted to create where are you? There you are. I wanted to create a Lennon and McCartney situation. So I asked Eddie, who I felt was really good at the verses. In other words, I would give him the subject. I'd write all the music, and basically I'd write mostly like this is what the song is about, and then he would fill in the verses. And I just found his words to be a lot more flowery than mine. I was a little bit too serious, I thought. So for a while we had this collaboration which worked, but I wrote most of them myself and brought them in to him. And unfortunately, like it didn't stay like that because I think uh, if you don't really enjoy the process, it becomes work, and it never was work for me. This was like a pleasure for me to do. I think Eddie kind of got bogged down a little bit, and I later found out that he asked his brother to help him out with lyrics, which we never knew.
Right, that's a
But
wild story.
and you don't know, and then in those days there was a 2 album a year minimum. I mean, like we did a lot of albums. Beatles did a lot of albums. Later years, as the artists became more and more powerful, and the gap in between albums releases would take maybe 2 or 3 years. They wouldn't do an album in 2 years. But when we did it, it was you had to do two a year. It's a lot of work. And as I say, if you enjoy that work, great. If you don't, then it becomes difficult.
Yeah,
So very interesting adventures to play.
absolutely. And when you have a song like Groovin and you bring it to the band, you bring it to Dino and you bring it to Gene, is it fully formed or was it the type of thing where you then flesh it fully out before you record it?
Well, basically, what I did is I established a relationship with Arif Mardin. He actually he took a rental, I believe it was, or in my old hometown, which was Pelham, New York. I would go over to his home, and I'd show him, this is what I did, man. This is what I have, and he would sit down at the piano with me and say, "That's good. I like this one. How about this? Try this." You know, and the try this was like, oh my God, how cool is that? Because one of the things about Arif, as I mentioned earlier, was this joy of making music. This was not a job. He didn't have to invite me over to his home to go through you know, the productions. Uh, he loved it, and you could tell, and his enthusiasm is just the same as you would have if you're a young person in a band. It was exactly the same, and uh, so by the time we got to the studio, uh, we really kind of knew what we were going to do, pretty much. As I say, sometimes when we get to the studio, lyrics weren't be completed, so we had a little bit of a backlog of tracks, and we had to catch up with the lyrics. But that was just the way it was. But musically, our band basically, with the exception of the bass, which happened later, because I played the original bass on organ, and Arif said one day, "Look, like sound is getting more and more sophisticated. There's a group around here, King Curtis's band, and there's a bass player around here. His name is Chuck Rainey, and why don't we invite him in?" Well, fortunately, we invited him in for Groovin,
Yeah.
and you know, to fall in love in a studio, it was an amazing, just an amazing relationship from day one. but because he was a phenomenal bass player, you know, and much as I tried with my left hand and my foot, I couldn't do what he did. I mean, it was impossible. So now we had the fourth so-called member in the studio, but everybody else, Gene, Dino, myself, and Eddie, that's it. We didn't bring anybody else in except for to solo. You know, like for example, some of the horn players that were walking in halls. So the sessions were a joyous occasion for the most part, at least to me. I mean, yeah, it was work, but you know, making music that you just created and hearing it back on these wonderful speakers, you know, uh, you just say like, wow, is this really happening? You know, is this really taking place? And then as it blossomed, you know, and we had great voices. I mean, you know, Eddie, and then later we brought his brother in, who was a great singer, David.
Yeah.
It was just a magical event, and the secretaries. See, the Atlantic studios were right adjacent to the offices in those days. It wasn't a big corporate venture. You know, the secretaries would come to the door of the studio and they kind of like start dancing and stuff like you said, okay, man, we got something here, you know. Wow. Plus, what fun. I mean, like I say, it was just a blast.
That sounds like an amazing time.
It was an amazing experience, you know, as I say, and uh, you know, we're first so lucky to have been part of that family.